Immigrants from Ireland went through extreme conditions and struggles to get to a peaceful life. The majority had to go through extreme poverty and poorness to get to America, and even when here, they had many hardships. The journey of these people began in Ireland. The living conditions were horrible, and there were many issues such as religion. Poverty was one of the biggest issues in Ireland at the time. The majority of the people were extremely poor and were not able to afford much food. The one thing that kept them from starving to death was the potato crop. Potatoes grew extremely well and sustained families. But in 1845 and 1850, a devastating fungus destroyed Ireland's potato crop. This led to extreme starvation and killed more than 1 million people in the time span of 5 years. By the early spring of 1846, panic began to spread as food supplies disappeared. People ate anything they could find, including leaves and bark of trees and even grass. Above having no money for food, people had no money for homes. Ireland was actually known to be probably the poorest place in Europe at the time. Many lived in windowless mud cabins called hovels. A census report in 1841 found that nearly half of the families in rural areas lived in these hovels. Diseases such as cholera killed thousands in Ireland. Fevers and other diseases also came from the potato famine, and at the time, there was little to no medical care available. People were dying rapidly and in large numbers. It was during the 1820s when the majority of the Irish had begun to immigrate into America. They had called this journey the American Way because they would never see their homeland again. From the years 1820 to 1996, the large number of 4,780,891 people immigrated to America from Ireland. They had to take a 40-day journey across the Atlantic and did not have enough money to buy food sold on board. Many just came with the old rags on their backs. Because fares on the Canadian ships were cheaper, many immigrants went by Canada and walked across the border into Maine and through South New England. These Canadian ships became known as coffin ships because so many immigrants died during passage or after they reached the land and were put into quarantines. 30% of the 100,000 immigrants to Canada in 1847 died on the ships or during quarantine. 10,000 died on their way to the United States. Others who can afford the fare traveled directly to New York on American ships, whose conditions were much better than these. Boston, New York was the city that most people settled in. About 37,000 Irish immigrants who arrived in Boston in 1847 increased the city's population by more than 30%. If not Boston, the majority would have stayed in cities in the East Coast. Almost every family decided to do this because they did not have the skills to farm in the American West. Once in America, the issues continued. Most were illiterate, and many spoke only Irish and could not understand English. Men usually would find jobs loading ships at the docks, sweeping streets, and cleaning stables. Women would work as servants to the rich or working in textile factories. Children would often be put in the streets to beg. Most immigrants stayed in slum tenements near the ports where they arrived and lived in basements and attics with no water, sanitation, or daylight. There were no streets where they lived, but paths which turned into ditches after heavy rain. In America, they also had religious issues. The majority of Irish immigrants were Catholic, and in America, many Protestants feared that the Irish were under the power of the Pope and could never truly be Americans. Because of this discrimination, the Irish Catholic immigrants tended to stay in small communities or ghettos. And while anti-Irish and anti-Catholic sentiment grew, newspaper advertisements for jobs and housing routinely ended in the statement, "No Irishman apply." Jobs were hanging out "No Irishman apply" signs. In 1844, Nativist rioters burned down 2 Catholic churches in Pennsylvania over a dispute of which Bible should teach in public schools. The Irish immigrants did eventually get out of these hard times. After the Civil War, America became more industrialized. Irish laborers found new, better-paid jobs. Many worked building railroads and factories and mines. They would also lead strikes for shorter hours and better pay. The Irish also began to be part of politics. Bosses of the political machine, the Tammany Hall in New York, helped immigrants providing necessities like food and coal in time of an emergency. The Irish Catholics ran Tammany Hall for years and helped many poor immigrants, including Poles, Italians, and Jews, as well as their homes. Irish also became educated by the 1900s, and only 15% of Irish American men were still unskilled workers. It became so much, and in recent times even got a presidential seat with John F. Kennedy, the first Irish president.